Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
It's like a Sharknado, except with poop.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. It's Tuesday. Got a fantastic show for y'all today. First, before we dive in, I just want to give a shout out to the mods. Thank you, YouTube, Twitch mods. You're amazing. So, SBloom85, thank you, as well as Rachel L. Thank you so much for modding the chat. You're all, of course, are amazing. Also, want to give a special shout out to Kentucky Progressive Dragon. I hear it's your birthday today. Happy birthday. So, with all that, I just want to also give you a little bit of a programming update. Not really a programming update because there's nothing different about today's program, but a little announcement. I'm going to be joining Farron Cousins tomorrow at noon on the Ring of Fire podcast. We're going to talk about the first year of the Biden administration, and I'm going to give you my thoughts. It's going to get a little spicy. I'm just letting you know that. Probably nothing that you haven't heard here before or thought, but nonetheless, should be fun. Tune into that. And if you can't, don't worry. They'll be putting the video up on YouTube. We're going to be having a fantastic discussion. Farron Cousins. Been a long time. And actually, it'd be my first time on Ring of Fire. So I'm really, really excited about doing that. We're going to do that, and we'll also maybe do a little discussion about what we think is going to happen in the midterms. Again, oh no. That one's also going to get probably a little spicy. Should be, again, a lot of fun. So, Ring of Fire, tomorrow, noon. Tune in for that. All right. You will talk about Comrade Biden. Ah, yes, the greatest communist that has ever communisted. Bringing, single-handedly bringing the United States into the new USSR. Oh, yes. Because, you can't spell USSR without US. And also, in true comrade fashion, you cannot spell USSR without us. Okay, anyway. Fun times. All right, so it should be a lot of fun. The more left-wingers are being Biden up, no thank you, basically doing flash jobs for them. No, here's the thing about that. I think criticism is fair. And and criticism is necessary. See, here's the thing. When the Democrats do good things, then we should praise them for doing good things. And the Democrats are not going in the direction that we think that they need to go in order to continue to win elections. Well, then think about it this way. If we ignore the problem that exists in the Democratic Party, i.e. corruption, big money in politics, and basically going towards neoliberalism, then if we ignore those issues and we don't discuss those or we don't talk about those and what the party needs to do better and actually start winning elections, then, well, we're going to have a problem with not winning elections. And so, and understand too, comparing left-wing media, especially independent media with Fox News, is super, super unfair. For one, Fox News will criticize Biden for the color of his suit. They did the same thing with Obama. That's not what we do. We actually have substantive criticisms. And actually, it's because we want the Democrats to do better. We want them to win elections, and we want them to do better. We don't. We want them to be better than Republicans because we actually expect them to be better than Republicans. And when they're doing the wrong thing, yes, you have to criticize them. Here's the other thing too. That's why his poll numbers are down. Okay, so his poll numbers are down mainly because he hasn't done a lot of the things that he has promised to do. It's not about, yes, of course there is media, and by the way, you're partly right in that there is media, right? Yeah, of course the media has been ripping him, but the media's been doing it for the wrong reasons. Again, they were saying that the Build Back Better was too ambitious. We're saying it's not ambitious enough. And so there's that difference here, okay? And that's a difference between, again, when you talk about corporate cable news versus independent media. And actually the $3.5 trillion, look, we would have been happy with that. Cenk himself had talked about this, and he says, look, we don't even have to get everything in Build Back Better. We just have to get a couple things. Just to, do a couple of big ticket items, and allow them to go, Medicare to negotiate drug prices and do paid leave. Just pick those two issues and fight for those really, really hard. And you can let the rest of the progressive priorities go for the meantime. And just try to get these, at least a couple of these victories. And again, they were not able to do that. And so that is valid criticism, where now you even have Build Back Better, that's not even going to pass. And so, yes, and that does, part of that lays on Biden for not fighting hard enough for his policy positions. And of course, the rest of that falls on the Democratic Party when it comes to things like, I don't know, trying to get Manchin and Sinema on board, filibuster reform, things like that. And so those are partly reasons, the lack of progress on a lot of these issues, part of the reason that we don't see good poll numbers. And as I mentioned before as well, media. Now you remember how I defended Biden after pulling out of Afghanistan. I think that was a fantastic idea, and I still will defend that to this day. I think that's the best thing that he's ever done in his term, is getting us out of Afghanistan. Yes, get us, and I will always support that position. But the media did not. Media hated that. Corporate media savaged him over this, and they have, I believe, unfairly savaged him over the inflation that has happened. And they're, of course, tying it to Biden's policies, which I'll tell you all the time. What policies has Biden passed that has increased inflation? And again, that's corporate media right there. Understand, that is corporate media that has been pushing that narrative of, we have inflation because of too much social spending, too much money in the economy that's making the prices rise, when in reality, of course, you have OPEC Plus, that, by the way, these oil companies are now raking in billions and billions of dollars from raising gas prices because of a artificial scarcity put in place by OPEC Plus. So, yes, there are legitimate reasons to criticize Biden, and there are also illegitimate reasons to criticize Biden. Basically, anything the Republicans try to criticize them on. There is a huge difference. Again, substantive criticism versus propaganda. It is not the same. We're not the same. Okay, obviously. And also, by the way, a lot of our criticism comes from a good place. So, come on. Plus, another thing to point out is not using the authority to cancel student loan debt. Whether it be 10,000, whether it be 50,000, whether it be all of it, which he should do, even though I know he's not going to go in that direction, if he were to cancel $50,000 of student loan debt, like Elizabeth Warren and the rest of the Democrats, Chuck Schumer is calling for this, because he has the authority, then yes, we would give him credit, because it would be a good thing that he could do and not have to involve Congress. But he, again, chooses not to do it, chooses not to do cannabis legalization, which, by the way, the Republicans are pushing for cannabis legalization of marijuana federally across the board. So, yes, there is absolutely room for substantive criticism on the failures of the Biden administration, as well as what few successes there is, mainly, of course, Afghanistan and some of the COVID relief. So, anyway, I think it's super cynical and very, I think, very team sport like. You know what I'm saying? Very team sport, as in to basically shut out left-wing criticism of a president that is on your side. Now, we got to call things fair. We got to call things even, okay? We got to call things like, not even, but we got to call things even-handedly, right? We got to make sure that, yes, we are going to criticize things that we see from both sides that they're doing wrong and give credit to the things that they're doing right. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know if you're listening, person who brought up that criticism, but hopefully you took a listen to that and maybe thought, okay, maybe he's onto something. I may not like it, but we got to hear constructive criticism sometimes, okay? I know it's not easy to listen and to think, oh, maybe our side's not doing what it should be doing. But again, this is about trying to not only win elections, which are desperately needed, especially when it comes to the midterms, but also in making this country better by doing good policy. And really, at this point, all I really want is policy. All right. All right. So let's see. MSM is running a story on Biden encouraging a girl with an impediment. Yes, I read about that. Behind the curtain, he and Holland just hold the largest sale of public waters to offshore drilling in our country's history. Very interesting. Also disastrous. Republicans are going to take over and never leave. Can't even agree that he has done a few. Super fan, however, Republicans are going to take over and never leave. Again, look, this is why I focus on Republicans, by the way. Yes, they're still always the bigger danger. But in the weakness of the Democratic Party, and trust me, I don't relish calling them weak, but it's just an obvious fact. They are. The fact that they are so weak is why Republicans, as you say, will take over and never leave. If it's not for the weakness of the Democrats, and the corruption and the money and the politics and the rightward shift economically of the Democrats and their inability to fight for the things that they say that they support, that is why they're going to lose to Republicans and do the nightmare scenario. We don't want any of that. We don't want that to happen. We want Democrats to stay into power, and we want them to do progressive things. We want them to do good things. Even if it's not as progressive as I'd like, I still want progress. We still need progress, and we still need to do things. Climate change, again, that's we're staring down the barrel of a gun when it comes to climate change. You know, that is something that we are not going to be able to get away from. It doesn't matter who's in power. We've got to do something about it. Now, of course, Democrats are a little bit more likely to do something, but as you've seen already, there's been not enough action on climate change, even in a Biden administration, because at this point, too, we have a literal coal baron that is deciding whether or not we can do energy policy, the Democratic Party, when it came to Build Back Better. So, yeah. Anyway, we do need to get money out of politics. Absolutely. We can't have progress while we have the duopoly. This is moderator S. Bloom 5. Kentucky Progressive Dragon says, yeah, Democrats practice shooting themselves in the face with failure. Okay, anyway. So, let's see. Why? Republicans literally don't have policies or a platform. Why do Democrats have to show their work? Because they have the messaging. And that's the thing. Republicans don't have, you're right, Republicans don't have a platform. They don't have policies. There's policies are the same. But what they don't have in those, what they lack in that, they have in messaging. That's why Democrats actually do have to do better and win in the messaging wars too. You have to do messaging, and you actually have to get things done. You have to deliver for the constituents. And so they haven't been. And obviously, if you deliver, then, I mean, it should be obvious. If you deliver for your voters are going to show up. If you don't deliver for your voters, they're not going to show up. And that's how you lose. So, yes, I understand that it's not fair and that it seems very unfair. Unfortunately, that's the state of our politics at this time. We really do have to start delivering, and by we, I don't mean me, but people in power, Democrats in power, do have to start delivering for the voters. And so far, this administration hasn't in many different ways. And so there has to be some big things that need to get done for them to have a chance in the midterms. Democrats suck at messaging, though. Feels bad, man, and they're not really delivering. Feels worst, man. Yeah, I mean, all of us are incredibly irritated and upset because we do want them to win, and we don't want Republicans to take over. And so I can understand too being mad if all I did is sit here like certain hosts and just 100% trash the Democrats every day. That's not what we're doing. But I'm also not going to sit there and play Team Democrat when I know they haven't delivered for the constituents, and there's some certain reasons why. And those reasons usually have to do with money, corruption, and political weakness. Okay, anyway, I've got to get to the stories. So let's do it. But look, let me just say this before I do. I appreciate the feedback. I really, really do. And I actually like conversations like these because I think they are fruitful. And so I do really appreciate you bringing up that criticism. And I definitely understand it. And I respect that because I do respect that kind of feedback. And so I really enjoyed having the back and forth here. And again, I appreciate you bringing it up to me and having, talking it out, I should say. And even if we don't agree, I still appreciate it. Again, bringing this up. And I think it is an important conversation to have. But I still would urge you to please tune in to see if you can just get anything from it. Okay. And if not, that's fine. All right, let's start out with here with a fun story. And that's actually not a fun story. We got snowflake. Yeah, that's weird. A California man was having some feelings about a Black Lives Matter sign in a local bar. So a video of the incident was uploaded to TikTok. Let's take a look.
You bullshit! You racist bullshit! You racist bullshit! Grow up, I'm white! I'm white! Get out! Kill me! Get out! Get out! Kill me! Get out! Kill me! I'm white! Get out! I'm white! Get out! Get out! Call the cops! Kick me out! Yeah, dude, you're in my space right now. Kick me out! I'm not gonna touch you. Can you leave? Can you leave? Nothing to do with anything. I'm white! Got nothing to do, bro. I'm white! Nothing to do with anything. You're making an ass of yourself, bro. An ass of yourself. Listen. You're gonna go to jail, bro. You break my
So now, according to the TikTok user who uploaded that video last week, the man became upset after spotting a Black Lives Matter sign, as I mentioned. It's funny because just imagine being so fragile, talk about white fragility, right? As to react to a sign that just says Black Lives Matter. It's stating a simple fact. Black Lives Matter. But no. Since it's not about him, well, then of course he's going to get upset and he's going to accuse other people of racism, which again makes absolutely no sense. None at all. Now, here's the thing. Realize that saying Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that other lives don't. It's what Black Lives Matter is as a statement, as a phrase, is a general, gentle reminder for those who have either forgotten somehow, I don't know why, but forgotten somehow, or didn't even realize that Black lives actually mattered. I mean, look, society doesn't, or at least shouldn't need to be reminded, but look, if you follow the news at all, and you probably notice how many unarmed Black people are shot and killed by police. How many Black people are in jail for nonviolent offenses? How many people are harassed for just being Black? And all of that. I mean, it's pretty clear that in this country, people need a reminder. But it's true. Now, look at Ahmaud Arbery. Now, I talked about that case. Guy was just jogging down the road, checking out a house. It was being built like everybody else. But he, because he was Black, he was chased down. He was cornered by 3 men with guns, shot and killed. It took 72 days for anyone to be arrested in that case. The day of the incident, being interviewed by cops. The guy's like, oh yeah, obvious criminal. Obvious criminal. We saw him running. He's running. And then, we did a citizen's arrest. And the police are like, checks out. We're done. Not going to do anything. And then, of course, during the trial, the McMichael's defense, they were talking about Arbery's long, dirty toenails. And how he was a hairy Black man in a changing neighborhood. Oh no, the neighborhood was changing. You know what was happening? The neighborhood was being more diverse. But that scares old white people. I know. But understand that there is a long, dirty history of dehumanizing Black people in this country, in the United States. So that the result of all of this was that people would think that Black lives don't matter. And it's not always that explicit, by the way. It would just be like, it's stuff like, I don't know, they deserved it, they earned it, they must have done something. So that's why we have to reverse that, okay? We have to remind people that, yes, their lives do matter. Absolutely. And again, this shouldn't be hard. This shouldn't be difficult. This shouldn't be something that you have to explain. But unfortunately, you have to explain it. And here's the thing, too. All lives won't matter. And this is the all lives matter, people. Like, you say all lives matter, but it really doesn't seem to be the case for you. All lives won't matter until Asian, Black, and Indigenous lives matter too, and all the other groups that are discriminated against. All lives won't matter. All lives won't matter until all lives matter. So anyway, look, serious points aside. Now it's time to make fun of the guy. What a sad little snowflake. Going into this bar and like, I'm white. F your racism. I'm a victim. Come on, dude. Really? Really? The guy's literally in a place called Chula Vista. Are you really? Do you not know who you are or where you're at? I'm not sure what you were expecting in Chula Vista. The area does have a pretty large Hispanic population. Not a good place to be racist. Well, to be fair, there's no good place to be racist, but Jesus. If you do a racism there, you're going to get kicked out. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to have a bad time. So maybe you just don't be racist. Look, but here's the thing, okay? I say, make racists uncomfortable again. That's it. I love it. Now, finally, to cap off the snowflakeness of this man, Chula Vista police told Newsweek on Monday the white man was later arrested for vandalism for damaging the door. He's mad. He's so mad. He's so mad. He smashed the door. You saw, he slammed the door because he got triggered. And that's what it is. Now I'm going to guess, just based on this, that he watches a lot of conservative media. Now, again, conservative media is a bubble, nigh impenetrable, unfortunately. It is a very, very safe space where you are also constantly told to be afraid of everything. Bit of a contradiction. But, you know, anything that's not white and Christian, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Oh, no. They're coming for you. They're coming for your job. Scary. Now, here's the thing, though. At the beginning of Black Lives Matter protests, Republicans actually supported it. You had 54% of Trump voters in June of 2020 saying, yeah, of course we support nonviolent Black Lives Matter protests. Of course, we don't want police murdering black people. 54% of Trump voters. Now, later on, something changed drastically. By November of this year, that number dropped to 24%, by half. Now, only 24% of Republicans or Trump supporters support nonviolent protests against police killing black people. Nonviolent. So now they're saying, well, I mean, you shouldn't protest at all. Black people get murdered. Well, that's their fault. Always their fault. So now it's important to note, too, the Democratic voters stayed pretty consistent. Support for nonviolent Black Lives Matter protests against police went down by 1% within that year, from 89% to 88%. Vast majority of Democrats are like, of course we should do nonviolent protests against police when they kill our black people. Yes, that makes sense. So look, all those people out there, by the way, the Democratic consultants that are like, oh, you know, we really shouldn't focus on criminal justice reform or police reform. No, they're not interested in that. We shouldn't focus on that at all. We should just focus on Donald Trump consistently. Well, you're wrong. You're wrong. The Democratic Party, Democratic voters do want police reform. They do support Black Lives Matter. And so you might want to, start listening to your own base. But now, that 29 percentage point drop in Trump voters, however, their approval of peaceful protest was accompanied by an identical increase in the share of Trump voters who had strongly disapproved In a 4 YouGov Economist polls conducted last month, an average of 49% of Trump voters strongly disapproved of non-violent protest in response to the deaths of Black Americans by police. I mean, it's very, very clear what's going on here. Okay? They don't want Black people protesting. They just don't. They don't want them. They want them to shut up and dribble. And that's really it. Shut up and dribble. And look, here's part of that. Getting back to the point about conservative media, right? They have been convinced by their own media, their apparatus, that racism doesn't exist. And also, not only that, and so, okay, that's not quite true. They don't think racism against Black people exists, but they believe that racism against white people is more important. That actually exists. In fact, only a quarter of Trump's 2016 voters believe in the evidence that the justice system treats white people better than Black people, and they believe that, it is white people who are being discriminated. Nearly half of all Trump voters from 2016 thought discrimination against white people is the actual problem. They say, no, that's the real racism. It's against us. It's against white people. We got it so bad compared to Black people. Are you kidding me? Holy crap. Now look, again, this is, and again, I watch conservative media closely when it comes to narratives. This is the narrative. This is the Tucker Carlson effect, okay? This is Tucker Carlson's Fox News, Newsmax, OAN. Donald Trump, for example, as well, saying these things. Conservative media pushes the narrative that it's racism against white people that is the real problem in this country, while denying them access to facts and real information, and pushing what is essentially white grievance politics. And that's what they are. And this guy is a great example of someone who bought into the white grievance nonsense. And there you go. Let me give an example of how white people are actually treated better by police in this next story. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. An attempted terrorist was given no prison time despite planting several bombs intended for people participating in Black Lives Matter protests. So now this is according to an article in the Washington Post that looked at the case of Matthew McConaughey. So Matthew McConaughey is a Pittsburgh man who decided, after having some personal problems, that he was going to take this out on Black Lives Matter by putting homemade bombs near a site of one of their rallies. Yeah. So now this was about around May of 2020. And this man planted these bombs and was caught, obviously, and received a very light sentence. So now, after one Pittsburgh protest had turned into a riot, McConaughey rode his bike to a plaza below a skyscraper in the heart of downtown and planted a backpack with some homemade bombs and then left. Now, these bombs never went off, thank goodness. Prosecutors, though, said, hey, they could have went off, and if they had, they would have hurt someone or killed them. Now, again, he was caught by police thanks to video footage that was given over by the skyscraper. This is private footage, and had pleaded guilty to charges of illegally possessing 3 destructive devices. So now, what's a destructive device? I mean, let me give you some examples of the law. A destructive device is a grenade or bomb or an explosive projectile or missile, a certain type of rocket or rocket-propelled device, a projectile that contains flammable or explosive materials, and certain types of illegal weapons, such as certain firearms. So this guy had a projectile that contained flammable or explosive material. Basically, he made himself Molotov cocktails. So he had about 3 of those in a backpack, and that was the ones he dropped off. He had the materials in several more backpacks at his house when police had raided him. And this is members of the ATF that had raided his home and seized these materials and what would have been devices. So now, possession of a destructive device is usually charged as either a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on what happens. Misdemeanor charges can lead to criminal consequences, such as fines up to about $1,000 and jail time of up to about a year. Felony charges can result in more serious penalties, including greater fines and sentences of longer than 1 year. In this case, prosecutors asked for about 30 months. So, look, that's just over 2 years. I think that itself would have been pretty light. And yet, here you go. You had District Judge Danetta Ambrose that sentenced him to time served, which he had served in pretrial, and 6 months of house arrest and 3 years of probation. So that's it. That's what he gets. He planted a bomb, 3 of them, at a site of a Black Lives Matter protest rally. And again, thankfully, they didn't go off, but that's literal terrorism. Now, think about this for a second. This man been a Muslim. Do you think that would have mattered? Do you think that, the fact that he had a bad day, that he was having some issues, and, and put these bombs, which didn't go off, do you think that would have mattered for the Muslim? No. No, it wouldn't have mattered. Wouldn't have mattered at all. No, and let me give you an example here. Now, there was a California man that had planned the bombing of a political rally in Long Beach, California in 2019. So now that person was sentenced to 25 years in prison, and rightly so. So now this guy wanted to plant 2 bombs filled with incredibly long nails, shrapnel, because he wanted to do maximum damage. Understand? So obviously this would be, a felony, right? Now, thankfully he was working with undercover law enforcement. He was caught. Didn't happen. But what he wanted to do is that he wanted to do terrorism to try to atone for the crimes against Muslims. So this guy's, been radicalized in favor of jihadis, okay? Now, obviously, this is not the same. This is not the same situation here. Understand that these 2 cases are different, but, and by the way, deserve different times. Again, Michanowicz wasn't necessarily planning to do as much damage, as I said, as the person wanted to bomb a political rally in Long Beach, but he still wanted to do damage. And actually, again, the guy who got 25 years was like, yes, I want to do lots and lots of damage. I want to kill many, many people. Caught in the act. Okay? So now this guy, Michanowicz, again, he tried to bomb a BLM rally. I would go with at least 5 years minimum for this guy. But he got nothing. No jail time. None. Just time served. Why? Now, Michanowicz's lawyer, Ken Haber, told the Washington Post in a phone interview that the judge might have considered his client's recent mental health issues and personal struggles. Within a year of placing the bombs, Michanowicz lost his job as a successful medical salesman who worked with neurosurgeons. His father and good friend died. He got divorced. Oh. I think the judge was somewhat convinced that he had a breakdown, adding that his client had stressed that he had never meant for the devices to go off. But then what? Why take the time to build the devices, ride them out to a certain spot, and place them? Oh, I didn't think they were going to go off. I didn't want them to go off and hurt anybody. That's why I made them in the first place. and then figured out where to put them and then put them there. I'm not buying this at all. This is ridiculous. And now, here's the thing. You could maybe make an argument if the person, again, had a breakdown, got a gun, or grabbed a gun somewhere, and went on a rampage. Okay? Even that, though, that's a stretch. Again, he made the bombs, placed them in a place where Black Lives Matter protesters had gathered one day after a riot and looting had happened. Very, very strange. I'm sorry. I'm just not convinced that this is a result of a mental breakdown. Okay. Oh no, it's mental illness, mental breakdown. He's just having a rough day, so we're trying to go bomb a bunch of people. No, people have mental breakdowns all the time. They don't go around making bombs. Oh, but hard times. Lost my job. My wife left me. I did some drugs. But of course, if you do all that, you're gonna want to bomb black people. No, that's not how that works. The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. What a ridiculous argument, but it worked. It worked. Isn't that amazing? I cannot believe this defense. Worst defense I've ever seen. It worked. Oh, you want to talk about a two-tiered justice system? That's a two-tiered justice system. Right there. Again, do you think a Muslim who used that same excuse, same situation, same excuse, you think that Muslims are going to be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, you're having a tough time. Time served. You're fine. Probation. No, the guy's going to go to Guantanamo. What one-way trip to Gitmo? That's what he'll get. A black person will be under the jail. No, this is a two-tier justice system. 100%, where absolutely white people do get treated better in our justice system than black people. And that's it. That's a stone-cold fact. That is one example of how our system is still racist. Another example as well is why it is important to maybe, I don't know, have critical race theory. Because this is a type of thing that critical race theory actually addresses. All right, go to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene recently suggested that people who are in prison for rioting on January 6th are being discriminated against based on the color of their skin because they're white. Take a look.
Here's what I can say about criminal justice reform. I do not think it's good for anyone in prison to have to read Nation of Islam newspapers and that be one of the only publications they have, or information or curriculum that informs them because of the color of their skin. This is why they're being treated this way. I don't think that is good to rehabilitate anyone. I think in prisons and jail, we should rehabilitate people. As far as the difference in the jail, though, it's very clear. The January 6th defendants, they were not allowed to participate in any of the continuing education curriculums that we were shown that other inmates and other pretrial defendants are allowed to participate in. The January 6th defendants are not allowed to participate in job training like the other inmates and defendants are allowed to participate in. The January 6th defendants are not allowed to participate in mock trials that there was a third-year law school student there helping other inmates learn how to handle the courtroom and what to do. None of those things were offered for the January 6th defendants. They were isolated in a separate wing of the jail where they are abused, where they are ridiculed, where they are mocked because of their political beliefs and because of January 6th and because of the color of their skin. So there is a two-tier justice system, and these are the things that need to end. I believe in criminal justice reform, but I believe it should be reform that's fair completely across political lines and skin color. And I can tell you what we saw in the D.C. jail, none of that exists.
Oh, wow. Now she's in favor of prison reform. Well, isn't that interesting? I mean, you want to talk about irony here, okay? Marjorie Taylor Greene, pro-prison reform. Feels weird, man. Feels real weird. So, look, again, this was a press conference where she was touting this report, this Republican-backed report on the January 6th defendants and their conditions in jail, which I'm sure are not good. You know why? Because jail itself is not good, not a pleasant place to be. Turns out weird, I know, especially in America, where, you know, of developed countries, I think we've got some of the worst conditions. Again, of developed countries, there are obviously places that are worse for inmates, but certainly we don't exactly favor rehabilitation in this country, especially, of course, when it comes to people of color. So now that gets to what she was saying. Oh, they're being treated badly because they're white MAGA. Oh, they're Trump supporters. The color of their skin. And that's why they're being treated so unfairly in the DC jail. Oh. Now, this is the narrative that they're pushing, which goes back to white grievance. And that's what it is, purely. Oh, white people are being treated badly, worse than minorities. See, it's not racism against black people. That doesn't exist. But it's racism against white people, especially white Trump-supporting Republicans. Oh, they're the real victims. They're the real victims. No, here's the thing. They're being treated like any other prisoner. I mean, look how close they are, though. They're so close. They're so close to realizing that prison in the United States has always sucked. It just sucks. It's not supposed to be a resort. That said, am I in favor of prison reform? Absolutely. Of course they are. I would definitely love to see a less punishing system and more of a system of, as she mentioned, rehabilitation. The conditions, by the way, though, that she talks about that are so heinous and abhorrent, well, those are normal prison conditions for black and poor people. I'm just saying, if you go to jail as a black person for a nonviolent drug possession, which happens all the time, even though, you know, marijuana is legal in many different states, it should be legalized federally, Biden, you should get on that. And not only that, but, you know, if they're going to legalize, you know, drugs, marijuana, at least cannabis, then they should scrub all convictions and let all of the people that were put in jail for a plant out. But then, of course, they don't do that. But here's the thing, right? So prison, again, in the United States sucks, and they get treated very poorly in prison, no matter what you're in for. This is how they're treated. And yet, Republicans, when it happens to one of them, when it happens to MAGA chuds, well, then suddenly they're like, oh, I can't believe how bad jail is. Wow, look at the conditions. They're so bad. Oh, and it's not because prison has always been bad, because then we'd actually have to admit that racism is real, and that black people get treated worse because they're a large percentage of the prison population. No, it's only bad because they're white. Oh, of course. No, the conditions have always been bad, and they didn't even realize it. And it's really amazing. The absolute caucasity of this situation, okay? But there's also a more insidious part of this. Other than just making fun of how ridiculous Marjorie Taylor Greene is. See, the thing is, they don't have a problem with treating everyone else like this in these conditions. They loved it when, for example, Sheriff Joe Arpaio would humiliate prisoners of color by, like, I don't know, I think I remember a story where he made them wear like pink tutus and stuff to try to humiliate them. Oh, look at the, you know, Latino prisoners that I captured. We're gonna make them parade around in little frilly dresses. Is that like some sort of kink? I'm not kink shaming or anything like that, but it just seems wrong to inflict that kink upon prisoners that have no control. There seems to be a little bit of a lack of consent here in that issue. Maybe there's something wrong with Mr. Joe Arpaio. But again, they loved it. They loved it when Arpaio would humiliate prisoners. Loved it. But, oh, now when it's Trump supporters, not even being humiliated, by the way, but just being put in jail in normal jail conditions, well, now they're like, oh, hold on there. You can't treat us like this. Yeah, you can't treat us like this at all. No. You know, maybe you shouldn't treat anyone like that. I'm just saying. And here's the thing, too. Controversial take. I don't think QAnon shaman should have been put in solitary. I don't think anybody should have been put in solitary. Solitary confinement is literal torture. That is what the UN is saying. That is a literal form of torture. Civilized countries do not use solitary confinement because it's really bad for the mental state. And by the way, if you're QAnon shaman, your mental state's already pretty iffy. You might not want to do anything to exacerbate that because, again, I don't believe in torture, and I understand that I might be a little lefty than some of you watching when it comes to prison reform. I get it. But we got to do something. Prison shouldn't be horrible. Prison should be about rehabilitation when possible, and of course, in the most extreme cases, making sure that that person still gets treated like a human being, but is kept away from the population at large to protect the rest of the population. There is a way that you can do this, all right? I mean, again, I want to see prison reform for everyone. But now, make no mistake, Marjorie Taylor Greene says, oh, I support prison reform. Now, normally it'd be like, oh, great, cool, great. We can work together. Let's do some prison reform. But that's not it. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a good faith actor. Understand that they wouldn't care at all about conditions if it were BLM. Because they didn't care when black people were in prison before this. Donald Trump would if it were BLM, that had done January 6th instead, right? Trump would have called for the execution, the death penalty of everyone involved. Just like he did, for example, the Central Park 5, where he literally took out a full-page ad saying, I don't know, they're black, we should kill them, they had to have done something. This is after they were exonerated, by the way, because they didn't do it, they weren't guilty. But they say, they had to have done something anyway, they're black, obviously. And by the way, not even all black, there were some Latinos that were in there as well. But in MAGA eyes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They must have done something wrong. So as usual, this is just blatant, disgusting, but consistent hypocrisy from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay. The thing is, Jeff, the right will see this and actually believe she's doing something for prison reform. I don't know. Yeah, well, unfortunately. But again, all they care about is if it helps them. Let's move on. All right. Let's go to Devin Nunes. Oh, this is a fun story. You'll enjoy this one. Representative Devin Nunes is quitting Congress. Yes, he's done. Now, unfortunately, though, this is not a we got him moment because I would have played the clip. No, unfortunately, as you're going to see, Devin Nunes thinks he's going to do a great in his new job. Now, what job is that? He's going to be the CEO of Donald Trump's new social media company. Oh, fun. You know what? After all, maybe this does call for a we got him, but only when that company inevitably fails, and depending on the details of it. But let me give you some background here, some details. NPR. The California Republican will take the helm of the Trump Media and Technology Group next month, giving up his seat in the middle of his 10th term. Recently, I was presented with a new opportunity to fight for the most important issues I believe in. Nunes wrote in an email to his constituents, according to the New York Times. Okay, what issue? Money? I mean, maybe, partly, I don't know. It could be. But no, here's why he's quitting. He's quitting because of a cow. I kid you not. I kid you not. So now, first, let me read you his statement, which does not mention the cow. But he said, the time has come to reopen the internet and allow for the free flow of ideas and expression without censorship. Says somebody who I believe is with Trump in trying to eliminate Section 230. Which, by the way, Section 230 is really important because it does protect websites from the comments and the viewpoints of the users that post there. So that means that if somebody posts something that's pretty hateful and disastrous, that company that hosts it, for example, will not be held liable in the eyes of the law. Okay? Trump says, oh no, let's get rid of Section 230 and hold companies liable for what their users post. So, for example, if I on Twitter go and call Donald Trump a fat, piece of crap, which, by the way, that's super fat phobic and I wouldn't do that. But I'm just saying, if I were to be that kind of asshole and post that there without Section 230, well, then, Donald Trump could throw an absolute fit. Say, oh, I'm not fat. I'm in tremendous shape. I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in my entire life. Everybody tells me I'm in great shape. I'm very, very strong. The best genes, the best health. And then, after all of that, would tell the company, hey, I'm going to sue you, Twitter, for allowing that rando guy to mock me, to make fun of me. And I will hold you liable for that. So that's the problem. They don't understand that getting rid of Section 230 actually would be the death of the internet and would be the death of free discourse. But of course, it always comes down to, well, I'm a victim, people are making fun of me, and I can't have that. I am a snowflake with super, super tiny, thin paper thin skin. I can't handle any sort of criticism. I can't handle a parody account of a cow. We'll get to that. Okay. But he said this. He says, the United States of America made the dream of the internet a reality, and it will be an American company that restores that dream. I am humbled and honored that President Trump has asked me to lead the mission and the world-class team that will deliver on this promise. Still no mention of the cow, though. I'll get to that. In fact, Devin Nunes literally tried to sue Twitter over a cow. Now, there's a parody Twitter account called Devin Cow. We don't know who it is, but Devin Cow would make fun of Devin Nunes. Fun. That's fun. Now, there's another Twitter account that he tried to sue to have them censored and doxxed. It was Devin Nunes' alt mom. Again, parody accounts, lots of fun. I enjoyed the mocking of Trump through these parody accounts. And look, I think it's fine when people make parody accounts. As long as they're funny. As long as they're funny, I don't care. Some that are not funny, you kind of roll your eyes and like, whatever. Boy, you're trying too hard. But generally, okay, that doesn't mean that we should censor them, doesn't mean that we should shut down or ban them or anything like that. Or hold Twitter accountable by trying to sue them. And again, here's the thing, though. So he sued to try to dox them to get their identities in court. Now, you imagine what would happen. Well, obviously, you'd have a ton of threats, intimidation, trying to get this person fired from their job, all that stuff. So that would be disastrous. Ironically, that's the same kind of cancel culture that Trump and conservatives rail against. And they want to do it to this guy. Why? Because he's making fun of a Republican, making fun of Devin Nunes. So, yes, he was triggered by a cow. So, the whole free speech, I support free speech and I want to fight big tech censorship. That whole thing really kind of rings hollow. No, What they want to do is they want to control social media companies in a way that allow them to say heinous things completely unchallenged. And that's really what it is. This goes back to the same, the argument that the right uses about free speech is basically this. I want to be able to say the N-word. That's it. It distills down to that. Conservatives want so desperately to openly say the N-word. Every free speech argument was constructed around that overarching desire to say that. And that's why they're on a crusade. Free speech! We need free speech! Free speech! My free speech! I want to say the N-word so bad! God, I can't because people ban me when I say those things. And they want to do it in an open space. And by the way, again, there are other social media companies that allow you to say those things. Telegram. What is it? Getter? Maybe Getter. I don't know. These right-wing sites that have been set up. Well, they go there and they shout the N-word all day. But it's not good enough for them. No, what they want to do, this is the same thing as going into the public square, into the middle of a giant conversation. Imagine a bar, very packed, right? Big event, lots of people there. And what these people want to do is they want to take a bullhorn and go right into the middle of that crowd and scream the N-word. That's it. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. And that's who Devin Nunes is. That's who Donald Trump is. Okay? And by the way, again, they want to be free from the consequences of their speech, but at the same time, if anyone dares make fun of them, well, I mean, if you make fun of me, or if a cow makes fun of me, a fake cow on the internet, well, I want them destroyed. That's not free speech. That should be protected. That's not free speech. So, now here's the funny thing, the ironic thing about Donald Trump's website that Devin Nunes is going to be taking over. So for one, they haven't released anything yet. So they don't actually even have a product. But they do have a lot of big investors, which is fun. And they have this SPAC that's set up, which is basically a shell company. Interesting. Now, they did release like a what is it? A bit of a beta test.
Beta.
And it wasn't good. It was very sad. Very, very sad indeed. And now this was accidentally released, and what it was, and I remember doing this story, this was a cheap ripoff of Twitter. Basically. That's what it was. Cheap ripoff of Twitter. But in it had some interesting rules. You can't make fun of the website. And you can't, I don't know, make fun of anybody who's part of the leadership of the site. Now, that would include now Donald Trump and Devin Nunes. You make fun of those free speech warriors, you're done. You're done. You're gone. The fucking irony of this entire thing. So, in fact, let me read you the terms of Truth Social. That's the name. Truth Social says users cannot disparage, tarnish, or otherwise harm, in our opinion, us and or the site. There are also clauses stating that users cannot harass, annoy, intimidate, or threaten any of our employees or agents engaged in providing any portion of the site to you, and that Truth Social reserves the right to remove, reclaim, or change a username you select if we determine in our sole discretion that such a username is inappropriate, obscene, or otherwise objectionable. So much for freedom of speech, buddy. Seriously. Now, look, the cow, definitely one of the main reasons he's leaving. But the other reason, of course, is that he's not going to win re-election. So now there's actually a draft California redistricting map that shows that, well, Nunes' district is no longer going to be all that safe. And so it's going to be more difficult for him to win. And so what he's doing is he's like, fuck it, I'm going to cash out. That's it. That's it. We're done. Now, what's interesting, again, is that Trump's site is already under investigation. In fact, On Monday, the same day that Nunes' announcement, NPR reported that the shell company Digital World Acquisitions said in a filing that it is being investigated by federal regulators. Fun. Very hilarious. Now, one last thing here. And this is sort of my question, my speculation. Do you actually think that Devin Nunes is actually going to get any money out of this? I mean, there's almost no way that this media site, Truth Social, is going to make any sort of profit. I mean, it's inconceivable that they could even compete at all with Twitter or Facebook. Not to mention all the like cheap, scuffed, right-wing sites that everybody set up. Getter, what's the other one? Is Frank Speech, Locals with our friend Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin was this very big ideas. Huge ideas. It's going to put my brain in recovery mode. Such big ideas. No, there's so much. They're just fighting over this tiny little slice of the internet. I don't think they're going to do well at all. Gab, yeah, that's another one. And so my speculation is this is going to go bankrupt easily. Trump, Nunes, and by the way, before this does happen, before it goes bankrupt, I can almost guarantee that Trump, Nunes, and maybe some of the other executives were going to take as much of the investor cash, which they have been flooded with. They're going to take as much of that money as possible and run before the whole thing crashes and burns to the ground. And that's it. Again, if you knew anything about Donald Trump, you would know that this is the most likely scenario. Hear me now, quote me later. This is a grift. Okay. All right. Let's go to something serious, though. They're going to file for protection and run. That prediction doesn't count. As long as Trump's involved, it already is bankrupt. Maybe morally bankrupt. Okay, so maybe it's not a bold prediction. Well, you know me. Making predictions that everybody's already made. Okay, anyway. Let's do it. What the hell is critical energy theory? We'll talk about it. Ooh. Okay. If you've been paying attention, you might have heard about the conservative effort to stop critical race theory from being taught in K-12 education. Now, that's a fight that they've already won. Congratulations, guys. You've won. Because it was never taught in K-12 to begin with. You've already won. Congratulations. Critical race theory, a college-level course, is not being taught to first graders. Wow. Now, critical race theory itself, as I mentioned, it is a college-level course, but nonetheless, it has been rebranded into, anything that is actually teaching history about black people, that is now critical race theory. Just like, socialism or communism is anything that might actually help the working class. Now, the rebranding has been entirely successful, wildly successful on a state level, so much so that school boards have been replaced by conservatives, and people like Martin Luther King Jr. have been banned from some districts across the country. Teaching about civil rights, in some cases, have been banned. In Ruby Bridges, same thing. And so now with that victory, they're taking this idea into the realm of climate change. In fact, according to an email that was obtained by the Center for Media and Democracy and first reported by investigative journalist Alex Koch, they are basically taking this idea and they're expanding it to anybody, any bank or financial institution that is divesting from fossil fuels. In fact, here is part of that email from Jason Isaac, director of the co-funded Texas Public Policy Foundation. This morning, and this was written last Friday, at the ALEC committee meetings, you'll have the opportunity to push back against woke financial institutions that are colluding against American energy producers. Now, American energy producers. You understand that that's not a real thing. Yes, there are refineries that are here in this country, but oil companies are multinational corporations. Yes, they are taking oil from America, from underneath our ground, obviously. They're taking it, privatizing it, keeping it in private hands, and then refining it and then selling it on the global market. So, you know, that's not really American if we have to buy back energy that was pumped, buy back oil that was pumped here. It doesn't make any sense. So the whole thing about energy independence is a complete fabrication. It's a complete lie. Pushed by, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, fossil people who are invested in fossil fuel and CEOs. So, yes, who would have known? But anyway, this email, as I said, was obtained by the Center for Media and Democracy. And in their report, they note the model of this bill, and there's actually two of them, is based on anti-BDS legislation supported by ALEC regarding Israel, and was even passed in Texas to include discrimination against fossil fuels. In fact, they wrote, voting for this model policy and encouraging more state legislatures to adopt it will send a strong message that the states will fight back against, get this, woke capitalism. Woke capitalism. What the fuck is woke capitalism? Holy shit. Now, again, capitalism, you know what? I'm not even going to explain it, okay? The whole thing is just ridiculous. Holy shit. Now, they claim that major banks and investment firms are colluding to deny lending and investment in fossil fuel companies, using their market power to force companies to make green investments. Now, here's the thing. Green investments, corporations are not woke. Corporations have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders, right? To maximize profit. That's literally what corporations are created for. That's the whole point, maximize profit. And so if they're investing in green energy, it's because they're going to get a better return on investment because of how far the technology has actually gone and how much cheaper now things like wind energy are, for example, than coal. Wind and solar, cheaper than coal, especially when you factor in environmental effects. So, but no, when it comes to that, oh my God, being sustainable, how awful. They are forcing us to be sustainable. But it gets funnier. They call this, one of these bills, the Energy Discrimination Elimination Act. They're discriminating against us, guys. Oh, the discrimination, the horror. I can't believe it. Yeah, oh my God. So now, this would prohibit companies that boycott fossil fuels from receiving state contracts and pension investments. So this is public money. Now, the states are literally picking winners and losers. And the winners, of course, are going to be fossil fuel. Oh, now it does not direct the state to place these considerations above fiduciary responsibility, to be fair, because, of course, making money is the first principle, as they point out. You got to make more money, but it simply directs the state to choose, when possible, vendors that are not actively opposing that state's energy business. Yes. So, again, as I mentioned, what happened to the principle of not picking winners and losers? Well, obviously, they only believe in that principle when they're the winners, not the losers. But yeah, the whole point is we're just going to force banks to do business with fossil fuel companies. They don't want to. I mean, as long as, you know, as long as we're not forcing them to choose between profits and not having as much profit, because obviously profits are all we really, really care about at the end of the day. But, I mean, you know, we're going to use the power to the state to make sure that they are denied lucrative contracts and pensions, which, by the way, will absolutely cut into their profits. So if this happens, the banks, and they decide to, you know, not do business, divest from fossil fuels, they're going to take a huge hit. Pensions, it turns out, are a gigantic part and pool of investment money in the banks. I mean, again, pension funds are stored in the banks and used for investments in companies to return value to the holders of the pension. That's kind of the whole point of a pension plan. And with these pieces of legislation, there's another one. I'll give you the details on that. But they're banning these people, these banks, I should say, from a significant pool of investment money, because that bank might make the decision to not contribute to the exacerbation of climate disruption. Wow. And using the anti-BDS laws as a model, I mean, that's just the icing on the shit cake. Because of course, right? Of course. Now, ALEC, during its National Policy Summit in San Diego last week, also passed another model bill. So now here's what ALEC does, okay? So they create model bills, and basically they write everything down and just leave a blank spot for the legislators to sign on. So, and they'll just hand deliver it, you know, oh, here you go, congressman or congresswoman. We just, you know, have a place for you to sign your name. We've got everything done. You don't even have to read it. It's just right there for you. That's what ALEC does. And they've had all this model legislation before. They're the people that constantly write model legislation. Now, in that recent summit, the second bill is this. It's called the Resolution Opposing Securities and Exchange Commission and White House Mandates on Climate-Related Financial Matters. And what it does is that it encourages states to take up legal challenges against forthcoming rules from federal financial regulators around climate risk and disclosures, potentially aiming to trigger a similar wave of lawsuits from states that followed the Clean Power Plan during the Obama administration. So there you go. They're going to have a bunch of states now, if this goes through, that will be suing over any sort of, you know, climate-related financial matter. Now, this follows a letter sent to the U.S. banking industry by state treasurers, plus a comptroller and auditor from 16 extraction-heavy Republican-controlled states just before Thanksgiving, pledging collective action against reckless attacks on law-abiding energy companies. Law-abiding energy. How many times have oil companies or pipeline companies, for example, oil spills or accidents, pollution, or something like that? And it's never held on the company up. It's always the federal government. These companies, what they do is that they privatize the gains and they socialize the losses. So they're screwing you over. If you're a taxpayer, you're paying for ExxonMobil's spills, their oil spills. That's what they're doing. They're making you pay for it. And of course, they do that by, of course, their lobbyists in government that have paid off politicians in order to allow them to get away with just about everything. And so, I mean, this bill, by the way, along with the Energy Discrimination Elimination Act, make the argument that any policy that happens to reduce emissions, whether or not the banks are like, yeah, we think we're going to make money in alternative energy. No, if a bank decides to do business and not invest in fossil fuels, but invest in green energy instead, they're calling that discriminatory. How dare you do capitalism? How dare you? We don't want you to do capitalism. Not when it doesn't involve our beautiful, wonderful fossil fuel companies. That's what's going on. This is ironic. Deeply, deeply ironic. And here's the thing, too. you want to talk about real discrimination? All right, well, we'll talk about that. People of color end up suffering more than, basically suffering more than anyone else as a result of climate change. And I'm not talking about people living in the islands, which will certainly, of course, end up being flooded as sea level rise. That's a completely different thing. I'm just talking about in the United States. As the world warms up, as it has been, certain places get more of a concentrated warming than other places. And you know what I'm talking about? Urban areas. Urban areas get it way worse when it comes to heat than rural areas, big cities, inner city areas specifically. And there's a reason, of course. Lack of trees. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Trees, for example, the lack of shade actually increases the temperature of the ground in the cities and creates something called the heat island effect. Now, heat islands are basically urbanized areas that experience higher temperatures than outlying areas. Structures such as buildings, roads, and other infrastructure actually absorb and re-emit the sun's heat more than natural landscapes such as forests and water bodies. Neighborhoods with the majority of people of color actually end up having 33% less tree canopy on average than majority white communities, like in the suburbs. Neighborhoods with 90% or more of their residents living in poverty have a total of 65% less tree canopy than communities with only 10% or less of the population poverty. So you're getting these urban areas, you're getting these places in the city, you're getting these places where there's a lot of poverty that don't have enough trees. And that's actually exacerbating the effects of climate change that are already bad enough. I mean, as the climate gets hotter, Black and lower income Americans end up baking in the sun more in these areas. Now, of course, they can use air conditioners, but what happens there? Well, air conditioners, again, that uses more, depending on your cities, fossil fuels. So more heat from this heat island effect, from more climate change, ends up having people use more air conditioners, which actually uses more energy, possibly from fossil fuels. Because we do not have a robust alternative energy sector to replace these fossil fuels, which again puts more carbon and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which exacerbates climate change, which makes these areas which don't have enough tree canopy even hotter, which increases the use of air conditioners, and on and on. It's a vicious fucking cycle. It's disastrous. You see what's going on here? But these companies, they look at that and they see, oh, more air conditioners, hotter temperatures. Well, that just means more energy uses. That means more profit for us. Let's not do anything at all. Profit, profit, profit. It's all they care about. It's all they want. And so here they are. They're literally using the same model of going against BDS and fighting against critical race theory to now stop any investment, private investment even, into, because they've already, by the way, tried to stop as much as possible at the federal level investment in alternative energies. Now they're going after the private banks, and they're saying, hey, private banks, you can't do this either, or else you're going to suffer the consequences and not have access to pension funds and lucrative government contracts, which is a very big part of your fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit. Critical energy theory, folks. While we're busy reacting to all the horrible shit that Republicans are doing, they continue to come up with even more horrible shit. While we are still having a discussion about, maybe we should, do a little bit more investment in alternative energy, just a tiny bit. But by the way, now we're also going to allow all these drilling contracts, for oil exploration in the Gulf, go under Biden. Here we go again. Disaster. Okay. Well. Oh. So that's all I got for y'all today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Really appreciate it. Please give us a like and share. These videos do not get enough eyes. The live streams do not get enough eyes or attention, as some of you have pointed out earlier. So a way that you can help that is please to share. Please share everywhere you can. Show people these segments. And I really appreciate it if you do. You help us out if possible. Do we have any super chats? We don't have any of those. Or any Twitch subs or anything like that. That's unfortunate as well. Oh well. Thank you anyway. Thank you for, as I said, liking. Thank you for sharing. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Become a patron. That's a great way to help us. Or do super chats. There's also super thanks for the offline videos. Stars for those of you on Facebook who support the show as well. Thank you for all of that. Everybody, make sure not to miss it tomorrow when I'm talking with Farron Cousins on Ring of Fire. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a fun conversation. Tune into that. It's also going to be up on their YouTube channel as well later on in that day. So that's going to be a fun conversation. Tune in tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here to have another show, or to tune into another show tomorrow. That's going to be fun as well. So, all right, it's noon, Grumpy Cat. That's noon Eastern. Oh, thank you, Rialanen. I really appreciate that donation. Very, very kind of you. Figure out who we're going to raid on Twitch, by the way. Let's do... Oh, Deep Dive with Jordan Ewell. So that's always fun. All right. Love you all. Thank you. And remember, change begins with you. And everybody. See you tomorrow.
Amazing.
Mike Pence.
Big, massive dump.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate. How you like that, boy?
Please clap.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.